Most men don't notice the exact moment it begins. There's no loud warning, no dramatic event, no sudden collapse. It starts quietly, almost invisibly. One day you wake up and something feels different. Not wrong, not broken, just off. You go through your routine like always. You check your phone, you scroll, you get up, you move through your day. But there's a strange weight sitting in your chest that wasn't there before. And you can't explain it, because on the surface, your life looks normal. But inside, something is shifting. Something is waking up. And that's when the dark awakening begins. It doesn't happen because you turn 30. It happens because your mind can no longer lie to you the way it used to. In your 20s, you lived inside a fog. You told yourself stories. I still have time. I'll figure it out later. This is just temporary. And those lies felt comforting. They protected you. They gave you space to avoid reality. But now, something has changed. Time no longer feels infinite. You start to feel it, not in years, but in pressure. A silent pressure that whispers, you can't keep living like this. And that voice doesn't go away. At first, you try to ignore it. You distract yourself. More scrolling, more noise, more people, more excuses. But the problem is, you've already seen too much. And once a man sees the truth, he can never unsee it. That's the curse of turning 30. You begin to see your life clearly, not how you imagined it, not how you justified it, but how it really is. You start to question everything. The job you chose, the people around you, the habits you built, the dreams you abandoned, and the most dangerous question of all. Is this really my life? Because deep down, you already know the answer, and it terrifies you. Because if this is your life, then it means something else is also true. You wasted time. Not all of it, but enough to feel it, enough to regret it, enough to realize you're not where you thought you'd be. And that realization hits harder than failure ever did, because failure still comes with hope. But awareness comes with responsibility. Now you see the patterns. You see how you repeated the same mistakes. How you stayed comfortable when you should have grown. How you chose distraction over discipline. And suddenly, you can't blame anyone else anymore. Not your past, not your environment, not your circumstances. Because now, you see your role in all of it. And that's where the awakening becomes dark. Because it stops being about the world and starts being about you. You begin to notice things you ignored before. The way you avoid difficult decisions. The way you settle for less than you deserve. The way you silence your own potential just to stay comfortable. And it becomes unbearable. Because you realize you've been living below your own standard. Not because you couldn't do better, but because you chose not to. And that truth, it cuts deeper than anything else. You start replaying your past in your head, the opportunities you ignored, the risks you didn't take, the moments where you knew what you should have done, but didn't do it. And now those moments don't disappear. They follow you. They sit with you in silence. They remind you of the version of yourself you never became. And that's when regret enters. Not loud, not dramatic, but slow and constant. It shows up at night, when everything is quiet, when there's nothing left to distract you, and you're forced to sit with your thoughts. That's when it hits hardest, because there's no escape, no noise, no illusion, just you, and the truth. And the truth is simple. You're running out of time to keep pretending. At 30, you start to understand something most men ignore their entire lives. Life doesn't wait for you to be ready. It moves forward, whether you do or not. And if you don't move with it, you get left behind, not suddenly, but slowly, silently, 1 year at a time. And the scariest part, you don't even notice it happening until you wake up one day and realize you've become exactly what you feared: average. Not because you lacked potential, but because you never fully used it. It's the hidden fear every man faces at 30. Not failure, but wasted potential. Because failure can be fixed. But wasted time, that's something you never get back. And this is where the awakening splits men into two paths. The first path is denial. You ignore the feeling. You push it down. You convince yourself it's just a phase. You double down on distractions. You stay in your comfort zone. You keep living the same life, hoping something will magically change. But it won't. Because nothing changes if you don't. And the longer you stay on that path, the heavier the regret becomes. Until one day, it's too late to do anything about it. And then there's the second path, the harder path, the darker path, the path where you stop running and finally face yourself. This is where the real transformation begins. But it doesn't feel powerful, doesn't feel motivating. It feels painful. Because now, you have to confront everything you avoided. Your weaknesses, your excuses, your fears, your limitations. You have to admit that the life you built isn't enough. And that means something has to change. Not later, not someday, now. And change is uncomfortable. It forces you to let go of things that once defined you, people, habits, beliefs, even parts of your identity. Because the version of you that got here is not the version that will take you forward. And that realization feels like loss. You start to outgrow people. Conversations feel shallow. Connections feel forced. You begin to see through things that once entertained you. And suddenly, you feel alone. Not because no one is around, but because no one understands what you're going through. And that loneliness is part of the awakening. Because growth is isolating. You can't evolve and stay the same. You can't become more and still fit into environments that require you to be less. So you're forced to choose. Stay comfortable or become who you're meant to be. And that choice is where most men fail. Because becoming requires sacrifice. It requires discipline, consistency, pain. It requires you to show up. Even when you don't feel like it. It requires you to rebuild your life from the ground up. And that's not easy. But neither is staying stuck. The difference is, one leads to growth. The other leads to regret. And at 30, you finally understand the cost of both. You realize that comfort was never free, it just delayed the price. And now, that price is due. This is the moment where everything becomes clear. You either take control of your life, or you spend the next decade wishing you had. There's no middle ground anymore. No more pretending. No more waiting. Because now you know. You've seen the truth. And the truth doesn't let you rest. It pushes you. It forces you. It demands more from you. Not because life is unfair, but because you're capable of more. And deep down, you've always known that. You just ignored it. Until now. This is your awakening. Not the soft, inspiring kind people talk about, but the real one. The one that breaks you before it rebuilds you. The one that forces you to let go of everything fake. So you can finally become real. And it doesn't end in one day. It's a process. A slow transformation. Where every decision matters. Every habit matters. Every action matters. Because now, you're You're no longer asleep. You're aware. And awareness comes with responsibility. You can't go back to who you were. You can only move forward or stay stuck, knowing exactly why you're stuck. And that's a pain most men can't handle. So they choose distraction. They choose comfort. They choose denial. But not you. Not if you've made it this far. Because if you're still listening, it means something inside you has already shifted. You feel it. That discomfort, that pressure, that voice telling you there's more. And that voice is the beginning of everything. Because the moment you listen to it, the moment you act on it, your life changes, not instantly, but permanently. You stop living on autopilot. You become intentional, focused, disciplined. You stop chasing validation and start building value. You stop wasting time and start using it. You stop pretending and start becoming. And slowly, piece by piece, you rebuild yourself, stronger, sharper, more aware, not perfect, but real. And that's what most men never reach, because they never face the awakening. They run from it. They suppress it. They silence it. But you didn't. You faced it. And that changes everything. Because the dark awakening isn't the end. It's the beginning. The beginning of a man who finally sees clearly. A man who takes responsibility. A man who refuses to waste what's left of his time. A man who understands that life doesn't give second chances freely. You create them through action, through discipline, through pain. And now, you're standing at that point between who you were and who you can become. And the only question left is, what are you going to do with it? That question doesn't leave you. It follows you into your mornings. When you wake up and stare at the ceiling a little longer than usual, it sits with you during the day. When you're doing things that once felt normal, but now feel meaningless. And it hits hardest at night, when everything slows down and there's nothing left to distract you from yourself. Because now, you can feel the gap between who you are and who you know you could be. And that gap, it starts to haunt you. You begin to notice it in small moments. When you hesitate to take action, when you choose comfort over growth, when you tell yourself, I'll do it tomorrow. That gap widens, not instantly, but slowly, silently. Every time you ignore your potential, it stretches a little further. And deep down, you know it. That's why it feels heavy. That's why it feels uncomfortable. Because your mind is no longer protecting you from the truth. It's exposing it. At 30, your brain stops being your escape and becomes your mirror. It reflects everything. Your discipline or lack of it. Your focus or your distractions. Your strength or your avoidance. And for the first time in your life, you can't lie to that reflection. You start to see patterns, not just in your actions, but in your thinking. How you doubt yourself before even trying. How you overthink simple decisions. How you wait for the perfect moment that never comes. And suddenly, it becomes clear. The biggest thing holding you back was never the world. It was you, your habits, your mindset, your fear. And that realization feels like pressure. Because now, there's no one left to blame. No one left to point at. No more excuses that feel convincing. Just you. Standing in front of your own potential and realizing you've been the one standing in its way. This is where most men break. Not physically, but mentally. Because it's easier to stay asleep than to live with that level of awareness. So they retreat. They go back to distractions. They bury themselves in comfort. They choose temporary relief over permanent change. And for a while, it works. They feel okay again. Numb, distracted, safe. But the truth? It doesn't disappear. It waits. And every time it comes back stronger, louder, heavier, until ignoring it becomes more painful. Then facing it. And that's the moment everything shifts. Because now, you don't have a choice anymore. You either confront your life, or you slowly lose yourself in it. There's no neutral ground, no safe middle. Because once you've seen the truth, silence becomes unbearable. So you start questioning deeper. Not just what you're doing, but why you're doing it. Why you wake up at the time you do. Why you spend hours on things that don't matter. Why you surround yourself with people who don't challenge you. Why you keep repeating the same routines that lead to the same results. And the answers aren't comfortable. They reveal something most men avoid admitting. You built your life around ease, not purpose, convenience, not growth, distraction, not discipline. And now, you're paying the price for it. Because purpose requires effort, growth requires discomfort, and discipline requires sacrifice. Things you spent years avoiding. But now, avoiding them is no longer an option, because the longer you stay where you are, the more unbearable it becomes. You start to feel trapped, not by your circumstances, but by your own patterns. And that's when the frustration hits. Not at the world, not at other people, but at yourself. You realize you had chances, opportunities, moments where you could have changed direction, but you didn't. And that regret, it fuels something inside you, something raw, something intense. It's not motivation. It's deeper than that. It's a kind of anger, not destructive anger, but awakening anger. The kind that says, enough. Enough wasting time, enough making excuses, enough living below your potential. And that feeling, it's dangerous. Because if you ignore it, it turns into bitterness. But if you use it, it becomes power. This is where the shift begins. You stop waiting to feel ready. You stop waiting for the perfect conditions. You stop waiting for someone to come and change your life. And you realize something simple, but powerful. No one is coming. No one is going to save you. No one is going to fix your habits, your mindset, your life. That responsibility is yours. And for the first time, you accept it. Not emotionally, but fully. You feel the weight of it. And instead of running from it, you carry it. Because now you understand. That weight is what builds you. So you start small. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. You begin to change things. Your routine, your focus, your environment. You remove distractions. You create structure. You start doing things you don't feel like doing. And at first, it feels unnatural, forced, even pointless. Because your mind is used to comfort. Used to shortcuts, used to avoiding effort. So it resists. It tells you to stop, to go back, to rest, to delay. But this time, you don't listen because you've already seen where that path leads. So you push through, not perfectly, not consistently at first, but enough to create momentum. And that momentum changes everything. Because for the first time, you start proving something to yourself, not to others, not for validation, but internally. You begin to trust yourself again. And that trust is something you didn't even realize you lost. But now that it's coming back, you feel it in your actions, in your decisions, in your mindset. You become more decisive, more focused, less distracted. Because now, you understand the value of time, not intellectually, but emotionally. You feel it slipping. You feel how fast it moves. And instead of fearing it, you use it. You stop wasting hours on things that don't matter. You become intentional. Every action has purpose. Every decision has direction. And slowly, that gap you once felt starts to close. Not completely, but enough to notice. Enough to feel progress. And that feeling, it replaces the regret. It replaces the frustration. It replaces the doubt. With something new, something stronger. Control, not over everything, but over yourself, your actions, your habits, your direction. And that's where real power comes from. Not from external success, but internal alignment, when who you are matches who you're becoming. And for the first time, you feel it. You're no longer running from yourself. You're moving with purpose, with clarity, with intention. And that changes how you see everything. You stop comparing yourself to others. Because you're focused on your own path. You stop seeking approval. Because you trust your own decisions. You stop fearing failure. Because you understand it's part of growth. And that mindset, it separates you. Not in an obvious way, but in a subtle, powerful way. You think differently, act differently, move differently, and people notice it. Not because you tell them, but because they feel it. There's a presence, a calm intensity, a quiet confidence. That wasn't there before. And it all started with that dark awakening, that uncomfortable truth, that moment where you saw your life clearly and decided to change it. Most men never reach this point. They stay stuck in the first phase, awareness without action, knowing what's wrong, but never fixing it. And that's the worst place to be, because it's a constant mental torture, seeing your potential, but never living up to it. But you didn't stay there. You moved, you acted, you evolved. And now, you're no longer the same person who woke up that day feeling off. You're aware, disciplined, focused, not perfect, but progressing. And that's what matters. Because at 30, the game changes. It's no longer about trying things. It's about building something real, something lasting, something that reflects who you truly are. And now, you finally understand that. Not as an idea, but as a reality. This is your beginning. Not the beginning you imagined, but the one you needed. The one that stripped away illusions, forced you to confront yourself, and pushed you into growth. And it all came from that one feeling. That quiet discomfort you couldn't explain. That moment where something felt off. That was the signal, the start of everything. And now, you're no longer ignoring it. You're becoming because of it. So the question isn't who you were, it's who you're becoming. And more importantly, who you refuse to become again. That thought stays with you, not as motivation, but as a warning. Because now you understand something most people never fully accept. It's not hard to build discipline. What's hard is maintaining it when no one is watching. When there's no pressure, no expectations, no consequences. At least, not immediately. That's where the real test begins. Because the same mind that pushed you forward is the same mind that will try to pull you back. Quietly, patiently. It doesn't come as weakness. It comes disguised as comfort. Take a break. You've done enough. You deserve to relax. And on the surface, it sounds reasonable, even justified. But you've seen this pattern before. You know where it leads. It starts small. One skipped action, one delayed decision, one moment of choosing ease over effort, and nothing happens. No punishment, no immediate loss. So you do it again, and again, until slowly, you start slipping back into the version of yourself you swore you'd leave behind. That's the part no one talks about. Transformation isn't a straight line. It's a constant battle, a daily confrontation between who you are and who you used to be. And the truth is, your old self never fully disappears. It waits, it watches, it looks for openings, moments of weakness, moments of doubt, moments where you feel tired, overwhelmed, uncertain. And in those moments, it speaks, not loudly, but convincingly. It reminds you of how easy things used to be, how comfortable it felt to not push yourself, to not think too much, to just exist without pressure. And for a second, it feels tempting, because growth comes with weight, responsibility, expectation, standards you now hold yourself to, and sometimes you just want to drop it all. Go back. Be that version of yourself who didn't care as much, who didn't feel this constant drive, this constant awareness. But here's the problem. You can't go back, not fully, because once you've seen your potential, living below it feels like suffocating. So even if you try to return to comfort, it doesn't feel the same. It feels empty, pointless, like you're betraying something inside you. And that's the trap. You're caught between two worlds, the comfort of who you were and the pressure of who you're becoming. And neither one feels completely easy. That's the real weight of the awakening. It doesn't give you peace immediately. It gives you clarity. And clarity comes with responsibility. You start holding yourself to higher standards, not because someone told you to, but because you can't accept less anymore. You notice when you're wasting time. You feel it when you're distracted, when you're avoiding, when you're slipping. And instead of ignoring it, you confront it, even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable. Because now you understand. Discomfort is the price of growth, and avoiding it is the cost of staying stuck. So you make a decision, not once, but every day, to keep moving forward, even when it's slow, even when it feels like nothing is changing, even when you question if it's worth it. Because there will be moments like that. Moments where progress feels invisible, where effort feels unrewarded, where discipline feels exhausting. And in those moments, your mind will test you. It will ask you questions. Why are you doing this? Is it even working? Wouldn't it be easier to just stop? And those questions, they don't have easy answers. Because growth isn't always visible. It doesn't always give immediate results. Sometimes, you're building something internally that won't show externally for months, maybe years. And that requires faith, not blind faith, but earned faith. The kind that comes from showing up consistently, from proving to yourself that you don't quit when things get hard, that you don't run when things get uncomfortable, that you don't fall back into old patterns just because they're familiar. And that's where identity truly changes. Not in big moments, but in small, repeated decisions. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, you reinforce who you're becoming. Every time you act with intention, you strengthen your direction. Every time you push through resistance, you build resilience. And over time, those small actions compound. They reshape you, not just what you do, but who you are. You stop seeing discipline as something you force and start seeing it as part of your identity. This is just who you are now. Someone who shows up, someone who follows through, someone who doesn't negotiate with excuses. And that shift, it's powerful because it removes the constant internal debate. You don't ask yourself if you feel like doing something. You just do it. Because that's what you do. And that level of certainty, it creates stability, focus, clarity, but it also creates distance. Distance between you and the life you used to live. You start noticing it more. Conversations that once entertained you now feel draining. Environments that once felt normal now feel limiting. People you once related to now feel out of sync. And it's not arrogance, it's awareness. You've changed, and not everyone around you has. And that creates tension. Because growth isn't always understood. Some people will question you, doubt you, even try to pull you back into your old patterns. Not because they want to hurt you, but because your growth challenges their comfort. It reminds them of what they're not doing. And instead of facing that, they try to normalize staying the same. You've changed. You're too serious now. You don't enjoy life like you used to. And for a moment, those words can affect you. Because part of you remembers who you were. The ease, the simplicity, the lack of pressure. But then you remember something deeper. You weren't fulfilled. You weren't progressing. You were just existing. And that's not enough anymore. So you keep going, not aggressively, not trying to prove anything, but quietly, consistently. You let your actions speak, and over time, things begin to shift. Not just inside you, but around you. Opportunities appear, not out of luck. But because you're prepared for them now, your mindset sharpens, your decisions improve, your confidence becomes grounded, not based on ego, but on evidence. And that confidence, it changes how you move through life. You take calculated risks, you speak with clarity, you act with purpose. Not perfectly, but intentionally. And that's what separates you now. You're no longer drifting, you're directing. Every step has meaning, every move has intention, and that gives your life structure, direction, momentum. But even with all that, the journey doesn't end, and there's no final moment where everything becomes easy. No point where you stop growing, because growth isn't a destination. It's a continuous process, and the moment you think you've made it is the moment you start slipping again. So you stay aware, not paranoid, but conscious of your actions, your habits, your mindset. You keep checking yourself, adjusting, improving, because now you understand something most men ignore. You're never finished. There's always another level, another version of yourself waiting to be built. And that's not overwhelming. It's empowering, because it means you're always in control of your direction, no matter where you are, no matter where you've been. You can always evolve, and that realization, it removes fear. Fear of being stuck, fear of being average, fear of wasting your life. Because now you know. As long as you keep moving, you're not stuck. You're progressing. And that's what matters. So you keep going. Not for validation, not for recognition, but because you've experienced both sides. The life of comfort and the life of growth. And you've made your choice. You know which one leads to regret and which one leads to fulfillment. And even on the hardest days, when discipline feels heavy, when progress feels slow, when doubt creeps in, you remind yourself of one thing. You've already seen what happens if you don't try, and that is no longer an option. So you move, you act, you build, day by day, step by step, not rushing, not forcing, but refusing to stop. Because this isn't just about success anymore. It's about identity, about becoming someone you respect, someone you trust, someone who didn't ignore the awakening, but used it. And that is what defines you now. Not your past, not your mistakes, not the years you feel you lost, but what you chose to do after you became aware. That's the real story. That's the real transformation. And it's still being written with every decision you make, with every action you take, with every moment you choose growth over comfort. This is your life now, not controlled by illusions, not guided by distractions, but shaped by intention, discipline, awareness, and the quiet understanding that you will never go back to sleep again. But here's the part no one warns you about. Awareness doesn't guarantee victory. It only removes your excuses. Because from this moment forward, every day you stay the same is a day you choose to stay the same. Let that sink in. Not circumstances, not luck, not timing. You. And that realization, it should disturb you. Because now, you can't hide behind, I didn't know. You know. You've seen it. You felt it. That uncomfortable truth sitting in your chest. That voice that keeps coming back no matter how much you try to ignore it. That's not weakness. That's your potential. Refusing to stay buried. And here's the danger. Most men reach this level of awareness, but still do nothing. They listen. They feel motivated. They tell themselves, this is it. I'm going to change. And then they go right back to their old life. Same habits, same routines, same excuses. Because feeling something is not the same as becoming something. And that's where the real separation happens. Not between smart and dumb, not between lucky and unlucky, but between those who act and those who just feel. So let me ask you something. Right now, not tomorrow, not next week, right now, what are you actually going to do differently? Not what sounds good, not what feels inspiring, but what are you going to execute when this video ends? Because this moment, this exact moment, is where most people lose. They wait. They delay. They say, I'll start later. And later becomes the same cycle that trapped them for years. But you already know that. You've lived that. So if nothing changes after this, then this wasn't an awakening. It was just entertainment. And deep down, you don't want that. You don't want to be another man who understands everything, but changes nothing. You don't want to be the guy who nods in agreement, then goes back to scrolling, back to distractions, back to comfort. Because now, that life will feel even worse. Because you're aware of it. That's the curse. And the power. So this is where it becomes real. Not motivational. Not emotional. Real. You have two choices, and they're both uncomfortable. You either accept the pain of discipline, or you accept the pain of regret. But what you don't get anymore is comfort without consequences. That phase is over, and you felt it the moment you turned 30. That quiet shift, that pressure, that awareness. That was life telling you. It's time. Not time to think. Not time to plan endlessly. Time to move. Because here's the truth most people avoid. You don't need more information. You don't need another video, another book, another explanation. You already know enough. What you've been lacking is execution. And execution doesn't come from motivation. It comes from decision. A hard, uncomfortable decision that says, no matter how I feel, I'm doing this. That's it. Simple, but not easy. And that's why most people never do it. Because they're waiting to feel ready. But you'll never feel ready. You act. And then you become ready. That's how it works. So right now, there's a version of you watching this, listening, thinking, I need to change. And there's another version of you quietly waiting, watching to see what you do next. Not what you say, not what you feel, what you do. And that version is your future. Stronger, sharper, more disciplined, more focused. But he only exists if you start building him today. Not perfectly, not dramatically, but intentionally. One action, one decision, one shift. That's all it takes to break the pattern. But it has to happen, because if it doesn't, then nothing changes. And if nothing changes, then 5 years from now, you'll be in the same place, with the same thoughts, the same frustration, the same regret, just older and deeper into the life you already know you don't want. So don't lie to yourself. Don't say, I'll try. Don't say, I'll see. Those are weak commitments, and weak commitments create weak results. Decide, right now, what changes, what stops, what starts, and follow through, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. Because that discomfort, that resistance, that's the doorway. That's where your new life begins. Not in comfort, not in ease, but in action. And once you step through it, there's no going back. Because now you're not just aware, you're becoming. And that is the difference between a man who watches his life and a man who takes control of it. So the next time that voice comes back, that quiet voice that says, there's more for you. Don't ignore it. Don't silence it. Answer it with action. Because at the end of the day, your life isn't defined by what you understand. It's defined by what you do. And now, you understand enough. The only thing left is to prove it.